Buyer's market versus seller's market. What's the difference? All right, welcome back to the JLA Realty Caleb Camp YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Welcome back. Good to have you. Hey, today I want to talk about something that is another common misunderstanding, or a thing that people seem to have a lot of confusion regarding, which is the difference between a buyer's market and a seller's market. So just right off the bat, basically a buyer's market is when a buyer has an advantage. A seller's market is when the seller has an advantage. But what kind of advantages do buyers and sellers have? What kind can they get? This is basic supply and demand economics, but a lot of times we, in our minds, separate those kind of economics from like the housing market for some reason. Typically, a buyer's market looks like there are a lot of houses for sale on the market at the time. So this creates an environment where a buyer has lots to choose from, and they're not really pressured into quickly buying a house or having to lower their standards for the house that they're looking for. Whenever you have so much to choose from, you can take your pick as a buyer. You can go in and say, well, I saw this other house that's very similar just down the street, and they might not have like this color of paint in there, but their sales price is lower, so I'm gonna go over there and buy that one. Or they say, well, I could get this house that is a resale house that was built in the 80s or 90s, or I could get this new house and it costs a lot less. So that's a buyer's market. The buyers have the advantage. They can pick and choose what they want. Sellers are going to have more pressure on them to make concessions to the buyer and say like, okay, well, we'll come down on our asking price. We will give you, some closing cost assistance or this much money towards whatever, like new carpet or a new roof or whatever. Also, a lot of times what causes a buyer's market and gives buyers plenty of choice for houses is when a developer will come in and buy up a bunch of land in one specific town, and they'll build a lot of houses really fast. They overbuild, they build too much, so now they've got too much and they need to sell really quickly, and they need to sell a lot. And so what the builders will do is they will bring their sale prices down, which means that the buyers can come in and get a house for a lower price. So if it's currently a buyer's market and you're a seller, whenever you're getting ready to list your house, you really need to expect to list your house at a more reasonable price. And if you decide, so whatever the market value is, you need to list it close to that. If you're going to sit there and say like, oh, well, the comparative market analysis that my realtor gave me said that, I could list it for, way up here, and you're in a buyer's market, you need to understand that it's going to be really hard to find somebody who's willing to pay that much over what all the houses around that house are listed for. In a seller's market, you might be able to get away with that because you, the seller, have the advantage. But in a buyer's market, the seller has a disadvantage, and they need to be more competitive with their pricing and price it either similarly to the houses that are around them or below that to compete with them. Nowadays, a seller's market looks like there aren't very many houses on the market compared to the amount of buyers that are looking to buy right now. And so what it'll look like is you list your house at market value instead of below market value or above market value. You list it at market value, and then you get some offers in that first couple of weeks. You get a lot of showings maybe on that first weekend, and you get a handful of maybe two or three, so a multiple offer situation right there in the first week or two. So the COVID market was a seller's market where there was not enough houses to supply all the buyers. So there's much higher demand for houses, and there's much lower supply. So the sellers have the advantage. When they list a house, they've got so many buyers coming immediately. And that was like an insane situation where you had situations where you had like somebody would list their house and they're listing it at market value, and then they're going to get, a handful of offers right off the bat, like in the first couple of hours. We shouldn't ever see that kind of market again anytime soon. So it's extremely important to understand what kind of market you're operating in whenever you are either going to buy a house or going to sell your house. If you're buying your house and you're in a buyer's market, then you should not feel pressured to offer over list price for a home. You should feel like you have the option to offer a little bit less. And as a realtor, your realtor should be negotiating for you like that. They should be negotiating for you according to what kind of market they're in. And they should be advising you on what kind of market we're currently in. They should also be able to provide data for that. A lot of times, something that I've seen happen is that people will hear, oh, it's a buyer's market. Well, you can have different kinds of markets localized in different areas. So for example, on one side of Houston, you would have this kind of market. On the other side of Houston, you might have another kind of market. It can get that local sometimes. Or you might be watching the news or see some things, scrolling that it's a buyer's market right now, or it's a seller's market right now. And that's really applying to the overall national market. Whenever you get down a little more granular into specific cities or specific regions, they could have a different kind of market in that region. It may be neutral, it may be completely perfectly balanced between buyers and sellers. So just because you see something that says it's a buyer's market right now, that doesn't mean that that's applying to your area unless you're getting it specifically from your realtor who's referring to your area that you're looking in, things like that. You need to understand that it can vary depending on the city, the state, or even just the overall national market. So basically, all that to say that there's buyer's markets and seller's markets can be very different, and your realtor should be advising you accordingly. And you should ask your realtor all kinds of questions about that. Really grill your realtor on these things. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions about any of that stuff, leave it in the comments or wherever you're seeing this. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. Give me a holler. I'd be more than happy to help and answer any questions that you might have. And if, whether it's related to buyers and sellers markets or whether it's related to anything real estate in general, just give me a holler. Thanks for watching. Bye.